Flee as a bird to your mountain, thou who art weary of sin. Go to the clear flowing fountain, where you may wash and be clean. Fly, for the avenger is near thee. Call, and your Savior will hear thee. He on his bosom will bear thee. All who are weary of sin, thou who art weary of sin.
Lovely. Good afternoon. My name is Pastor Atherton. Welcome to the First Congregational Church of Riverside. Some of you have only been here for a short time, for we are a brand new church, established for the worship of God and the just and right service of our fellow human beings. And that means everyone. He hath shown thee, O man, and that means all of us, what is good. And what doth the Lord require of us? But to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. Book of Micah, chapter 6, verse 8. Each of our congregants has a heart for this town and a heart for the needs of all people, no matter the station, no matter the color, no matter the circumstance. This is our promise, and you can put that in the bank. Moving on. I wasn't always so dedicated to serving mankind, not by a long shot. Was a time I was so heaven-bound I was no earthly good. But that's a waste of time, I thought. Man's infernal, cancerous greed, taking, pillaging, destroying, and then moving on. Destroying this beautiful earth, and then each other, and then ultimately themselves. I saw the wonders of the earth, and loved God for them. The natural order of this planet and its many forms of life brought me to my knees in praise and gratitude. Oh, but that love did not include man and his wickedness. But then it came to make sense to me. It brought me down sense to the core that God and this planet and its inhabitants are all shipped and stored in the same parcel, inextricably linked together, God, creation, and humankind. Since that day, and much to my surprise, my love for God has enveloped and increased my love for this dear world and its inhabitants. I've even begun to wonder, when I go to meet my Maker, will I regret leaving any of it behind? When I get to heaven, will the sea still be green? Will the land taste salty? Can you hear the seagulls beating wing? Can the waves still dance while the tide makes a foam? I might miss the ocean when my soul goes home. When I get to heaven, will the garden still perfume? Will the lilies greet me in their velvet white bloom? Will blossoms go to sleep at night and open toward the day? I might miss the flowers when my soul goes home to stay. They tell me that it's lovely there, that gates are made of pearl, and all streets are paved with gold, and jasper walls surround the world. I understand that shadows fade and everywhere is light. But what about the moon and the stars and dreams I dream at night?
When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be, when we all see Jesus.
I never thought I'd love this world until I held your hand. I felt you take my heart, and you made me understand that God is love, and touching him is also touching man. So dance in the grass, let the word become flesh, and wash the world in sun. And thank the God of heaven and earth until my soul goes home. Some of you are coming for the first time, albeit somewhat mysteriously. I'll grant you to witness this little miracle. For God, cloaked in his wondrous glory, makes possible the attendance here of a wondrous crowd assembled from the span of 150 years, drawn here through time to bear witness to the promises we have made and kept. Drawn here from different decades, drawn here to explain, drawn to inspire. Now, some of you are of this congregation, but not of this congregation. You have stepped out of your time, trusting in God's majestic power to be transported to the humble beginnings of this place, this people that you call home. We are a new congregation, but we are united in love. In fact, this very assemblage marks the beginning of our place in Riverside. 150 years, 1872. Oh, I do love this wonderful town and this wonderful congregation. And it is my wish, my hope, and my prayer that each will remain wonderful for a very, very, very long time. And you can put that in the bank. Moving on.
Reverend Atherton,
What is it, Maud?
tell them about the buggy ride a few years back when you were introduced to it.
What, to Riverside?
Oh, what else? It's such a fine place to be. It's where we were planted, and there's so much we can do for others here. Not just the up-and-comers, but those who need help. There are wrongs to be righted. Oh, I'm sounding like a dim-witted hen.
No, Maud. No, I understand. I suppose we could give it a gander.
Oh, tell that story, Reverend Atherton. It's a good one.
It wasn't that long ago. It was that buggy ride that convinced me we were in the right place. And nearly got me killed.
Oh, no exaggerating. You'll have to double up on your prayers tonight.
I don't exaggerate.
Oh, I'll see to it. I'm having tea with Mrs. Atherton this very afternoon.
Well, ooh, thank you, Maud. I have to see how to do this now.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Oh, it'll be hot. It'll be dusty. Now, this isn't a seance. We're just summoning him through the power of God's hand from his time to now. Summoning him now. Judge North, come please, by the power of God, by his hand, join us now here in this buggy. Judge North, come and join us here in this buggy. Join us here.
Reverend Atherton,
Yeah,
you dozed.
it would seem. Well, Reverend, it looks like I did doze, but wait, have we stopped?
Yes, we're here.
What hour of the day is it?
Just short of noon. We made the trip in nigh on 16 hours.
16 hours? from Los Angeles to San Bernardino in 16 hours. Amazing. You know, Judge, I can sense real improvement in my breathing and my faculties by just leaving Los Angeles and its rugged civilization. I do believe this barren land holds promise if abundant water can be obtained.
I think you may be correct, Reverend. It will take a good deal of work and the right sort of colonist, but the setting is both charming and challenging. I was under the impression that your new church in Los Angeles was thriving, Reverend. Are you finding Los Angeles less hospitable than you had hoped?
Well, the congregation is robust and vigorous and growing. But the intolerance directed toward the Chinese and the Mexican peoples is no different from the narrow thinking and that distressed the nation in the recent war. To the murders, lynchings, plus the inordinate amount of drunkenness and, I am convinced that there must be vast souls available who see the humanity.
All I can say is damn slavery. Yes. And damn the monstrous arrogance and hate that tolerates it and fosters it.
Yes.
Well, let me assure you, Reverend, that the community I envision for this part of California will appeal to individuals of a temperate and reflective nature, if I have anything to say in the matter. With a sincere effort, a good number of these souls you speak of can be attracted to this eternally shiny climate.
Is that the Santa Ana River?
Certainly is.
Robust.
This is our dry season, Reverend. You are seeing our river at its lowest.
Well, does that stretch form the northern border of the 4,000 acres you bought from the, what was that, the Silk Center land?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It certainly does. May I call you Isaac, Reverend?
Well, yes, of course. John, if I may be so bold.
So, Isaac, how did you find yourself in this rough edge of America?
Well, I was originally from Milton, Massachusetts. My student days were in New England, and I entered the ministry after graduating from Auburn Theological Seminary. Ordainment occurred in Iowa, at the Iowa Presbytery at Cedar Rapids. I was married about that time to my dear wife, Adelia. But my health encouraged me to move to a more salubrious climate by way of the Panama Crossing and a 3-year mission in the Sandwich Islands. Oh, California has been my home since 1868, when I established the Congregational Church of Los Angeles. Now, do tell me, John, what was your route to this place?
I, too, hail from New England, New York, to be precise. I taught school at the tender age of 15 and attended Cazenovia Seminary and Wesleyan University. But the stubborn refusal of the Methodist Church to condemn the outrage of slavery kept me out of the ministry. Yes. My first employment was as lecturer for the Abolition Society of Connecticut. Eventually, I veered into law in New York State and was appointed to the bar.
Where were you trained?
Well, I practiced in Minnesota and dabbled. No, rather, I immersed myself in political affairs and was deeply involved in the formation of the party of our sadly deceased savior of this republic. I was fortunate enough to be at the convention that nominated Mr. Lincoln in 1860 and had a good deal to do with the establishing of the University of Minnesota and founded the town of Northfield around that time. The war found me practicing law while establishing a surveying business in the Nevada territory, and I spent some time as Surveyor General there.
Well,
I was elected territorial judge and assisted in drafting the Nevada Constitution.
Well done.
Oh, well, thank you. But after a year as judge, we left for California after enduring some serious unpleasantness from the mining industry. Soon we removed to Tennessee, where I attempted to start a colony of industrious citizens, which would have included the recently emancipated, but we suffered serious financial difficulties when I publicly shamed a crowd of ruffians who were intent on lynching an innocent black man. Soon after that, with the help of my great friend and benefactor, Dr. James Reeves, the present colony plan for California became a reality.
You have indeed made a remarkable journey. Well, I look forward to crossing this stream and visiting the proposed site of your next endeavor. Are you sure this is the Santa Ana River?
Yes, indeed. And if we can avoid the sandy traps, rather, in this watercourse.
The sandy traps?
Quicksand. Brakes right.
Nah.
Nope, wait. There's a rock.
Ah!
Brace left. Nope. Oh, squirrel.
Oh.
Almost there. Very good, Reverend. Ah!
Ah!
Well then,
John,
what do you think? Isaac, what do you think?
recovering. Well, Judge, the soil seems moist, although arid is the climate here.
There is water in this valley, and if we can succeed in redirecting it this way, this colony may prove to be a successful venture. I'm becoming eager to publish a report to possible colonists willing to pioneer in this land.
Well, I share your enthusiasm. In fact, the salubrious air of this place may entice myself to join in this venture, perhaps assisting the design of some bridges.
Capital idea, Isaac.
You know, I yearn for a community of souls who see the dignity of God, all God's children, and are immune to the hatreds of race and class. It would please my soul to the utmost if I could be part of such a community, sharing the love of Jesus Christ and building a church that can stand tall far, far into the future. A church that practices love and service taught by Jesus so long ago. I must confess, the horrors of the recent conflict filled me with an earnest longing so long ago. A longing for a life in such a community. I was too old to participate in the war, and my health made it so I could do nothing to help. So I came out here to a more forgiving climate to prepare flocks of believers for the coming pestilence of slavery. Oh, I couldn't go further to the north. And where else can such a cancer spread but into the west? Bloody, hateful, intolerance. But we'll be ready.
Well said, Isaac. Your reflections inspire me a renewed enthusiasm for my venture, and I utterly agree with your longing for a community of stalwart and righteous people. I think my quest is ended, and if financing and water access can be assured, it is here that I will build a new community, and I pray it will reflect a spirit of tolerance, joy, and love.
One last question.
Ask it, friend.
You are an excellent driver. Are we going back the way we came?
I like you, sir. I truly do. Now, as to your question, brace yourself.
No. Ah! No. Oh. Well, what do you think? John, what do you think of our church now? Didn't start like this, but what do you think?
It's a fine structure, Reverend Atherton. A fine structure. Fit to stand the test of time.
Yes.
But it begs the question, doesn't it, sir?
What do you mean?
What of its people? Do they stand the test of time? Do they continue to stand against the rigors of greed and corruption? Do they continue to stand for man, woman, and child, regardless of their race, religion, or creed? Do they stand firm against slavery, against greed and corruption, against social inequity of any kind? Without hypocrisy?
Yes. Yes, they do.
Well then, sir, I declare this a fine place.
Excellent. Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Judge John North. If you would, sir. Well done. Did we find the young guitarist? Ah, ah.
He is the bountiful giver. Now unto him draw near. Peace then shall flow like a river. Thou shalt be safe from all fear. Haste now, the hours are flying. Spend not the moments in sighing. Cease from your sorrow and crying. The Savior will wipe every tear. Oh, Savior will wipe every tear.
Thank you.
Well, wow, thank you so much. You think it was well done, Mr. Miller? Thank you.
It was excellent. The pleasure was all ours.
Thank you for having us.
Mr. Miller?
In the flesh,
I'm
you
Judge-
must be the Reverend Atherton.
Yes, yes, indeed.
This is a magical event, isn't it?
Mysterious ways and all that, you know. And now, dear friends, Riverside's own Frank Augustus Miller. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you sincerely for this opportunity to share some of my memories of coming to Riverside and of my love for this city and this congregation. I'd like to say a little bit about my boyhood. I was the eldest son of 4 children, which comes with rather biblical expectations, being the firstborn, and even complicated more by the fact that my father was none other than Christopher Columbus Miller, C.C. Miller they called him, Captain Miller. He served as a civil engineer and was a veteran of the Union Army. My parents were both college educated, which was very unusual for the time, especially for women. My dear mother, Mary Clark Miller, wanted very much for me to go away to college as well. I was more interested in making money. So she solved the problem by hiring a tutor for me, and that worked out splendidly. I fell in love with her, married her, and we were married for 28 years, my darling Belle. If you'd permit me, I'd like to share some of my very first impressions of this place when I set eyes on it about 1874. To be frank, pardon the expression, I was less than impressed. When we first arrived in Riverside, it took 2 weeks to get here, first by train, then by ship from San Francisco to the port of Los Angeles, and then another train to what is now Pomona, and then another day by stagecoach to arrive at this. Nothingness. Dusty, windy nothingness. There were a few houses, a stable, a little citrus being grown, a general store, but where was this subtropical paradise they had promised us? Surely it was not here. Yes, there was a certain scenic western charm about the place, but it was hardly home. My home was back in Tomah, Wisconsin, a beautiful green place known for cranberries. My heart was there too. I had a sweetheart that I left and I missed very much. But there was water here, and lots of land, and promise. So I eventually embraced this place and grew to love it. I love Riverside. My father helped to set out plans for the Mile Square city and claimed the very best lot for us for $250. We set about building what you folks might call a bed and breakfast inn. We called our bed and breakfast the Glenwood, which is rather ironic because Riverside doesn't have any glens or woods. What it did have, though, was promise, and a strange recent arrival from Bahia, Brazil. A juicy golden fruit with a belly button and no seeds. The Washington navel orange, or as I like to call it, the Riverside navel orange. Early settlers, Eliza and Luther Tibbetts, obtained 2 of these parent navel orange trees and planted them in their yard. Well, those trees loved Riverside. Legend has it that she watered them with her dishwater. Planted in 1873, one of those trees still thrives here in Riverside. I love this town. By 1895, we were the richest per capita city in the nation. Imagine that. People flooded into what became known as the Orange Empire. Rich investors, immigrant workers by the thousands, mainly from China, but also Native American Indians and African Americans, Mexicans, Koreans, Japanese. Riverside was bustling. They called it the second gold rush. And it actually made more money than the first gold rush of the 1840s. I couldn't resist getting involved in a bonanza like that. I remained, and always will remain, an exuberant promoter of all things Riverside. I set about to find some funding to turn our Glenwood into a first-class destination hotel, a place that would attract inventors, investors, presidents, movie stars, authors, songwriters, and artists. I was determined to turn Riverside into a center for international art and culture. I wanted the world to come to our town, to sit in our pews, to eat at our tables, and to share our podiums. But something else also came to Riverside: greed, corruption, intolerance, classism, separatism, racism. And so, my love for art, culture, and Riverside grew into something else: a lifelong quest for international peace. In 1909, my good friend, photographer, and social reformer, Jacob Reese, in an effort to promote social justice, suggested that we hold a yearly Easter sunrise service on the top of Mount Rubidoux. It was a hit. In some years, the crowd exceeded 20,000 worshipers. In 1913, when anti-immigrant laws threatened to deny Jukichi and Ken Harada, Japanese immigrants who had not yet taken on the mantle of citizenship, to deny them the right to their own home or to put their home in the names of their US-born children, American citizens, my brother Ed and I decided to offer our support, and the Haradas won a landmark case. In 1914, when Booker T. Washington came to town to promote the work of his Tuskegee Institute, he spoke here at this church to a standing room only crowd. He also addressed a packed audience at the music room over at the hotel, and he stayed in the finest room. I love this town. Good people with big, generous hearts and the wisdom to know when to speak up and the wisdom to know when to take action. They asked for Booker T. Washington, and by golly, I got him. He had only 2 free days here, and he gave them both to the city of Riverside. The first day was mainly fanfare, teas, luncheons, posing for the press, that sort of thing. He was exhausted, I could tell. But I had to take him to one last spot. Something told me it was the right thing to do, and I wanted him to see, really see, Riverside. We got in the car and drove to the top of Mount Rubidoux. He almost fell asleep on the way. When he stepped out of that car, he took one look at the city below him and whistled. That's right, he whistled. We just stood there on that hill, he and we talked about what we saw and what we wanted to see in the future. On the way down, we just kept right on talking. I like to think that's when we became friends. Then came the wars. 2 monstrous conflicts that had impacted the entire planet. In fact, they've been dubbed world wars. Shameful and sad. For the rest of my life here in Riverside, I was determined to campaign for harmony between the nations and to achieve a lasting world peace. Pardon me. I lived through World War I, and I wanted so very much to prevent a second tragedy from happening again. I worked so hard to try to achieve this peace that I was given the Order of the Rising Sun by the Emperor of Japan. But not every battle can be won. And the war came. Some will say that I was mainly about the stuff of business and boosterism, and that is certainly true. Have I mentioned that I love Riverside? But more than just our town, I hope I'll be remembered for my work in the movement for peace and for living up to my mother's hopes. She taught me the values that I've lived my life trying to express. One of my mottos was, dramatize what you do. If that meant putting on a kimono to greet the delegation from Japan, I would do that. If that meant dressing up as a monk, even though I was a Congregationalist, if that meant dressing up as a monk and passing out oranges on the train to convince people to come here, I was in for that too. But it was so much more for me. Beneath the clock on the Spanish patio, you'll find a faded Bible verse, my favorite Bible verse. Where there is no vision, the people perish. My vision was about community, justice, peace, racial harmony, all of which continue to flow so vibrantly from the center and the heart of this church. Again, my thanks for allowing me to be a part of it. I love this town. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed my honor and privilege to welcome here today, for the benefit of us all, that man with whom I took a car ride to the top of Mount Rubidoux to take in that inspiring view. Have you done it? Oh, you must. Mr. Booker T. Washington, ladies and gentlemen.
My.
It's
You
good
are
to-
as sight for sore eyes, old friend.
It's good to see you again.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Good afternoon. On Sunday, March 23rd, 1914, I had the distinct honor of giving 3 presentations here in Riverside. The first being here in this very spot. I spoke of my birth on a Virginia plantation, the cabin where I lived with my mother, and how while working in a coal mine, I was attending night school so I could learn to read and write. I also spoke about overhearing 2 miners talking about a great school for colored people in Virginia. That was the first time I had ever heard anything about any kind of school or college that was more superior than our little colored school. I crept in as close as I could to the 2 men who were talking, and I heard one tell the other that not only was the school established for the members of any race, but the opportunities that it provided, by which poor but worthy students could work out all or part of the cost of a board, and at the same time be taught some type of trade or industry. As they went on describing the school, it seemed to me that this must be the greatest place on earth. And not even heaven presented more attractions for me at that time than did the Hampton Normal and Agricultural Institute in Virginia, about which these men were talking. I resolved at once to go to that school, although I had no idea where it was, or how many miles away, or how I was going to reach it. I remembered only that I was on fire constantly with one ambition, and that was to go to Hampton. This thought was with me day and night. I determined to make an effort to get there, although, as I have stated, I had no definite idea of the direction in which Hampton was, or what it would cost to go there. In retrospect, perhaps the thing that touched me and pleased me the most in connection with my starting for Hampton was the interest that many of the older colored people took in the matter. They had hardly expected to live to see the day where they could see a member of their race leave home to attend a boarding school. Some of these older people would give me a nickel, some a quarter, or a handkerchief. Finally, the great day came when I started for Hampton, but that is another story for a different time and place. With regards to slavery, from some of the things I have said, one may get the idea that some slaves did not want freedom. This is not true. I have never seen one who did not want to be free or who would return to slavery. I pity, from the bottom of my heart, any nation or body of people that is so unfortunate as to get entangled in the net of slavery. I have long since ceased to cherish any spirit of bitterness against the Southern white people on the account of the enslavement of my race. No one section of the country was wholly responsible for its introduction. And besides, it was recognized and protected for years by the general government. Having once got its tentacles fastened on the economic and social life of the Republic, it was no easy matter for the country to relieve itself of the institution. Then, when we rid ourselves of prejudice or racial feeling and look facts in the face, we must acknowledge that notwithstanding the cruelty and the moral wrong of slavery, the Negroes inhabiting this country are in a stronger and more hopeful condition, materially, intellectually, morally, and religiously. That is true than a number of equal people in my community in any other portion of the globe. This is so to such an extent that Negroes in this country whose forefathers went through the school of slavery, are constantly returning to Africa as missionaries to enlighten those who remained in the fatherland. This I say not to justify slavery. I condemn it as an institution. As we all know that in America, it was established for selfish and financial reasons, and not from a missionary motive, but to call attention to a fact, and to show how providence so often uses men and institutions to accomplish a purpose. When people ask me how, in the midst of what sometimes seems hopelessly discouraging, I can have such faith in the future of my race in this country, I remind them of the wilderness through which and out of which a good providence has already brought us. In closing, I would like to leave with two thoughts. One, no man whose vision is bound by color or race can come into contact with what is highest and best in this world. Lastly, if my life in the past has meant anything in the lifting up of my people and bringing about the better relations between our races, I assure you, from this day forward, it will mean doubly more. Because remember, the world cares little about what a man knows. It cares more about what a man does. And that's my second thought. Thank you for allowing me the privilege to speak to you. May your success always leave a footprint.
When you come to the end of a perfect day and you sit alone with your thought while the chimes ring out with a carol gay for the joy that the day has brought. Do you think what the end of a perfect day can mean to the tired heart? When the sun goes down with a flaming ray and the dear friends have to part.
Well done, gentlemen. Well done. From where I stand, there is so much to be proud of as I look at this church and its place here in Riverside. But not too long in the future, after me, before most of you, war will maim, cripple, and break the heart of the world in unspeakable ways And we will make mistakes. Terrible mistakes. Here is Sumi Harada, who has suffered and survived.
This thing on?
Yes.
That guy. He said, whatever you do, don't mess with the microphone. Well, since I did the worst thing, I guess he doesn't have to worry about me anymore. He can't see nothing.
Wait.
Hey, my God.
What?
I got it.
No,
I'm old, I'm not dead. Hey, that's better. All these big wigs up here. People that have done big things. Then you've got me. I haven't done big things, but I've done plenty of hard ones. My father always said, Nana korobi ya oki. Fall down 7 times, get up 8. And this place, the people of First Congregational Church of Riverside, you offered help when we needed it. We meaning the Japanese of Riverside, and we meaning my family, the Haradas. Where to start? How about we do a good news, bad news thing? Which you want first? Okay, good news. My father, Jukichi Harada, came from a long line of teachers. Very respectable job in Japan. But he didn't want a prescribed life. He dreamed of America, of adventure and opportunity. So he left Japan and my mother and worked his way here on ships. He landed a job in Redlands as a waiter and cook, earning about $35 a month, enough to bring my mother and brother here in 1904. Bad news. My mother didn't pass the health screening test. Problem with her eyes. And even though a specialist swore she wasn't contagious, they sent her back. Okay, good news. 9 months later, my mother came back. My parents moved to Riverside in 1905, along with about 1,000 other Issei, people born in Japan. Most were agricultural workers. This is where you come in. That same year, First Congregational and the Methodist Episcopal churches worked together to help the Japanese immigrants open their own churches. The First Congregational Conference offered financial help, while the FCC provided teachers for all kinds of classes: English, Sunday school, sewing, cooking. You even offered your own sanctuary for Christmas services. In 5 years, my family grew by 2 more members, my sister and brother. My family was running a boarding house downtown. You're picturing a cute little bed and breakfast, aren't you? Stop that. We rented to immigrant families. Not nice, crowded, poor ventilation. But we'll get back to that. We're still on good news. My family saved every dime so my father could open the Washington restaurant right across the alley from the Mission Inn. Big picture of George Washington, flags, red, white, and blue bunting. Place where all kinds of people could come together. White, brown, black, Japanese, American. Not everybody liked that, of course. Race mixing was a big no way for a lot of people. Not Frank Miller, though. He was what you would call a Japanophile. Crazy about everything Japanese. FCC people were progressive even back then. Where was I? Oh, me. I was born in 1909, and my brother Shig 3 years later. A family of 7. Now for the terrible news. When I was 3, my 5-year-old brother Tadao got sick. He had a breath-stealing cough, fever, diphtheria. Nothing to do but pray. The doctor urged my parents to get us out of the rooming house. It was making us sick. The next day, Tadao died in my father's arms. And my father vowed he would make us have a house of our own no matter what. There was a home for sale on Lemon Street, less than 4 blocks from here. The house on Lemon Street, National Historic Landmark. There's a book about it. You should read it. It cost $1,600. Not the book, the house. Hey, my father had the money to buy it. The problem was the alien land law. A person born in Japan couldn't own property. But my father got to thinking, 3 of his children were born right here in the US. So, good news. In 1915, we 3 Yankee Doodle kids became the legal owners of the house on Lemon Street. We were thrilled. Bad news. Not everybody was so happy. Some of the neighbors formed a committee right away to try to get us out. Well, if we come in, who would be next? We would sink property values with our Japanese germs. Oh, we would start a crime wave. The neighbors tried to buy us out, offering over 1/3 more than we paid. Good news. Frank Miller offered to buy the place in his brother Ed's name, and then when the time was right, transfer the deed. But bad news. My father wouldn't have it. His response? I won't sell. You can murder me, you can throw me in the sea, and I won't sell. The neighbors filed a lawsuit. The state of California versus Jukichi Harada, May 28, 1918. Good news. It was grueling, but we won. The judge ruled we 3 children on the deed, American citizens, entitled to equal protection. The political rights of American citizens were the same no matter what our parentage. Victory! Land of the free and all that. The Haradas live happily ever after, right? If only there wasn't a little thing called Pearl Harbor. Bad news. There was. December 7, 1941. Japan bombs Pearl Harbor. War is declared, and soon after, Executive Order 9066 is issued, declaring the evacuation of all persons of Japanese ancestry, whether American citizens or not. Goodish news. When the FBI was raiding our houses and suspected us of being traitors and spies, the church offered support. Some of you wrote letters, spoke to political leaders on our behalf. And even though we had to close our restaurant, we didn't lose our home like so many did. Jess Stabler, our friend and loyal customer, volunteered to stay as caretaker. And First Congregational agreed to hold all my family's paperwork, including the deed, until the end of our incarceration. Shig and I were the only ones left at home in 1941. But our concern was for our aging parents. Because my older brother was a doctor, we agreed they should go with him. We left on May 23rd, 1942. Shig wrote the date on the wall upstairs. It's still there. My parents were sent to Tule Lake and then to Camp Topaz in Utah. Shig and I went to the Arizona desert and posted. Hot, dusty, wind without end posting. Flimsy barracks, no privacy, and barbed wire. I still hate barbed wire. The news doesn't get good, not here. My parents died at Camp Topaz. 9 months after my father's death, I was able to leave the camp, but I still wasn't able to return to the West Coast. Still dangerous, I guess. I went to Chicago, got work. Shig was able to join the U.S. Army. He served his country proudly, despite how it treated him. After the war, the church offered support for the returning Japanese, reopening their building on 14th and Vine Streets so the Issei could hold services. Returning to Riverside, I came here, to this place. It's only a short walk from my home on Lemon Street, where I house fellow internees, helping them put their lives back together after so much loss. Good news. Not the yippee kind, but I made a worthwhile life. Did you know I volunteered at Project Food? From the start, I worked the line. Dick Wing used to like to tease that people were scared of me. That's okay, though. I like to keep them on their toes. I never liked inefficiency. In 1992, I was given a check for $20,000 issued to all surviving internees. Good news? Not really. $20,000 for my family's business and my parents' lives. But money is money. Better in my hand than Uncle Sam's. I'll tell you one thing I like to do with it. Every year on Pearl Harbor Day, that's right, you heard that, I would gather some friends from FCC and I would take them to lunch. And you know what? Hamburgers taste a lot better when the US government is picking up the check. Like my father said, Nana korobi ya oki. Fall 7 times, get up 8. Makes sense now? That's all I got for you. Hey. We're supposed to sing a song now. What? A song. Hey.
Come then to Jesus our Savior. He will redeem thee from sin. Blessed with the sense of his favor, make thee all glorious within. Call for the Savior is near thee, waiting in mercy to hear thee. He by his presence will cheer thee, thou who art weary of sin. Oh, thou who art weary of sin.
The question bothers me. How should we repair?
For what?
For war. What else?
We had a bloody war to make this country.
And we've just come through an even bloodier one to break it.
It seems like we just start to make a little progress, and
But
then
then will come another war.
And another.
And another.
The church must take hold of things.
Pray through it
Yes.
and listen for God's voice.
Yes.
No,
There's no other way.
It's commerce that will end this
No,
problem.
we
Yes,
must-
if
my
you
colleagues-
invest in
Well,
business, you take
together,
away the profit
then we'll
motive,
be able to
and then you campaign for.
Stop this. This is no way to serve our future, arguing over the best ways to meet our needs. It's pointless. It's futile. It's vanity.
Vanity? Madam,
You talk a lot. Need to listen.
Oh, shush. Oh, did that come out of me?
The only way we can be sure that we are affecting change is to devote ourselves to work at the home, where we live. Each recipient being a giver so that it can be spread out and away from us like a healing force, like medicine, spreading from one to the next, to the next, and the next.
Yes, on and on.
We must do right where we are. We must do good right where we are. Give aid, protection, food, and shelter right where we are.
Do it in abundance, and we will reach the world like a spring soaking the soil. There should be no need to strive and fight if we serve and love each other in abundance.
Each and every day.
Oh, it makes me want to cry.
Well, this is the end of a perfect day.
Near the end of a journey to.
But it leaves a thought that is big and strong.
With the wish that is kind and true.
For memory has painted this perfect day with colors that never fade.
And we find at the end of a perfect day the souls of a friend we've made.
Are we done yet?
I'm not, I suppose so.
Executive decision. Time travel makes my feet hurt. I want to go home.
Well done.
Reverend Atherton, is there something on your mind?
Oh, no. I am just very, very blessed.
Well, there's a lot to clean up. Let's make yourself useful. Let's get working here. As my sainted mother used to say, the devil makes work for idle hands.
Thank you, Maud.
And don't forget, a watch pot never boils.
Thank you, Maud.
Too many cooks spoil the broth.
The slotted spoon can catch the potato.
Many hands make light work.
Yeah.
Well, first I'd like to thank the audience for being out here for this performance and the 150th anniversary committee for being long-distance runners. We had 3 events, all of which were lovely. I'd like to thank Chris Marsh for taking a vision that we had and turning it into reality. I think the cast did a fantastic job. I noticed Reverend Michelle over here somewhere. Stand up, Reverend. Yay. I want to mention, I'm supposed to tell you where the food is, but hold on here. I have a few more words. Barbara Wilson is offering to do some tours of the interior of the church. Eric Beecham is offering to do some tours of the outside of the church if anyone's interested. Okay? And then there is food. It's straight down towards the light and turn right. Thank you so much.